Hola, bienvenidos a todos y buenos días. I can't hear you, but I know you're all so excited from your living rooms, your backyards, your kitchens. I can feel that love. So I'm Sonia Gutierrez, journalist and Denver native, and I'm also a new mom, a dreamer, mexicana de un rancho de Parral, Chihuahua, and lover of all things community. I am so delighted to welcome you to the virtual 7th annual Our Story Forum, presented by the Latino Community Foundation of Colorado. So before we continue our program, let's take a moment to thank Denise Froman, who joined us all the way from Philadelphia. Denise has performed on stages across the country, so we're really lucky to have her. Thank you so much, Denise. We welcome all of you who have joined us from your home in Antonito, Colorado Springs, Rifle, Fort Morgan, Fort Collins, right here in Denver, and all of our friends from out of state and even out of country. We are here together, and when we are together, we are stronger and better because of it. So we know in our virtual audiences that we have every generation from our community, including our honored abuelitos, abuelitas, our parents, baby boomers to Generation X to Generation Y and Z. And I'm sure there's a few newborns out there. I know my little man, Noah, is also watching and supporting mommy. Hi, mijo. The Latino Community Foundation of Colorado, known to all as LCFC, is an organization of great people with the goal of elevating our Latino community. LCFC keeps the Colorado Latino community connected through events such as this forum to build relationships, celebrate cultural traditions, and enjoy performances by local and international artists. In presenting the Our Story Forum, the LCFC provides a magnificent platform for Latinos to tell their stories and their own narratives. At its core, LCFC is led by Latinos for Latinos. I've been involved with LCFC for 7 years now. It's kind of crazy saying it out loud. I was born in Parral, Chihuahua, and brought to Colorado when I was just 2 years old. My mom, to this day, cleans houses. My dad works at a tire shop. So I come from a humble home with incredible values. I went into journalism because I wanted to see people who look like me tell stories about our community in a fair and just way. LCFC has played a big role in my life. With mentorship by Rachel and Carlos, they were the ones who told me to explore opportunities in different places and states, even though my mom was a little afraid of that, but we just took a big leap of faith, took me all the way to South Carolina, where I was the first bilingual reporter doing stories on air in both English and Spanish. Quite incredible for that state, but very well received. Incredible experience for me. And like I said, it was thanks to that guidance that I received from LCFC, Rachel, and Carlos. LCFC, I hold them very, very dear and near to my heart. They've made a difference in my life, and I know they've made a difference in many others' lives. So for the past 6 years, we've held this event in person. But as a result of the COVID-19 pandemic, we will be doing this virtually, which gives us a chance to connect on social. So let's use the hashtag OurStoryForum. Here, I'll start. Let's take a quick selfie. Uy, I don't know how to do that, huh? There it is. I'm going to post it on social using the hashtag OurStoryForum. And you do the same so we can all check out each other's pictures, how you're tuning in. You know, when you have the pantalonera por abajo and that cute shirt por arriba. I know I'm going to be seeing a lot of those pictures. So we hope that you'll take some time after the forum to join us in the Conexión Cafe. We've also set up watch parties all over the state that we'll check out during the program. Wherever you are joining us from, please follow safety guidelines. I know this is fun, but we need to make sure that we stay safe. Wear your mask in public and wash your hands often. We know our community has been hit hard by COVID-19, and we encourage you all to do whatever you can to protect yourself and your family. And if you need help, just ask. There are many local and state organizations right at your fingertips that can be found in the Advocacy Central that is in this event's e-attend platform. Well, man, what a day we have planned for you. Be sure to take a look at our agenda and download it onto your computer so that you can follow, make it a little bit easier. This year, the Our Story Forum is presented in 6 chapters, so 6 parts. We'll begin with the Colorado Governor, Jared Polis. In part 2, we'll check in with our statewide watch parties. That should be fun. Part 3, we'll hear from our social and political leaders, including Lisette Chacon, State Senator Julie Gonzales, and our featured speakers, the CEO of NALEO Education Fund, Arturo Vargas. We'll have a few musical breaks with the Latin Grammy-nominated ensemble, Making Movies. In part 4, Será una bendición with Teresa de Jesus Berlinda Vigil of the San Luis Valley. In a very special performance, we'll be joined by Obama presidential inaugural poet, Richard Blanco. In part 5, Rising Voices in Action, how we can use what we've learned to make a difference in our community, and completing the day with part 6, Connect and Reflect, which will be reflecting on what we have experienced and learned together. Now that is a great program, am I right? So let us begin. Please welcome the President and CEO of the Latino Community Foundation of Colorado. Bienvenido a mi amigo, Carlos Martinez.
Thank you, Sonia, for kicking off the Latino Community Foundation of Colorado's 2020 Our Story Forum, Rebuilding Our Future Together. This year, our virtual forum is allowing us to reach hundreds of people throughout Colorado, other states, and even people in Latin America. We're most appreciative of having you MC the forum, share your story, and be with us as we come together in community to build our civic power. I want to thank all of you for joining us. It means a lot to me that you have taken the time to be with us, to be inspired, to be among community, and to learn how you can make a difference in your community. I want to start off with the concept of herencia, or inheritance. I come from a humble family where inheritance was not talked about in the sense of property or money being passed down, or genetic characteristics being passed down. Inheritance was talked about with respect to traditions, our cultural values. That's what was being passed down. Our stories, our heritage, or other immaterial possessions. These made up our inheritance, our family pride. I, as well as you, carry that family pride, that herencia that moves us, motivates us, makes us act. It's what keeps our generations grounded in identity. I now want you to take that concept of inheritance and transfer it to community inheritance. What if we were to embody and live out community values, community traditions, and community culture that contributed to our self-worth, that built authentic pride for all of us, that motivated us to be a better person and to act responsibly? Imagine the inheritance you would leave our community. The theme of our forum is rebuilding our communities together. As we rebuild and reimagine our communities for the future, we must do it with a community inheritance mindset. We have to come together and build upon our values of unity, respect, caring for one another, giving of our talents and skills, giving back monetarily, and involving all generations in this process. For if we do it right, not only do we instill these attitudes, behaviors, and beliefs in us, but we learn to pass them down. In doing so, we give our people a place to be, a community to connect, a space to act, and an identity to exist. I want to offer my condolences to any of you who have lost a loved one to COVID. Offer comfort to those of you who got infected with COVID, and thank those of you who took care of someone with COVID. My sympathies to those who lost or know someone who lost a job, to those families who are having a hard time homeschooling, to families finding it difficult to put food on the table or pay for rent or mortgage. Our community is in pain. COVID has affected our community disproportionately. COVID showed how Latinos and other people of color are experiencing inequities on the job, in school, in public, accessing healthcare, and racial ethnic racism that's been taking place. COVID has changed the way we live forever. It will offer a new reality. Therefore, we must come together so that we create a new reality for our communities. We determine our destiny. We can't rebuild and fall into the past. People need to feel as though they exist. They need to feel valued and need opportunities to think and act big for themselves, their family, and their communities. At the LCFC, we started doing some of this work in the past 6 months. We worked with Latino nonprofits, community leaders, and funders, and developed a COVID strategy that has raised $1.5 million to help families with rent, food, bills, to help Latino nonprofits improve their technology, to operate remotely, and to help stabilize organizations in our community that are important to tens of thousands of Latinos. I hear the stories. I know some of the families. I understand what our communities are going through. And the one thing I hear over and over again is, if we're going to get our families and our communities to a better place, we need to do it as a united community. That is why this forum is about together, rebuilding our future together. It's about seeing yourself as part of a bigger community, seeing yourself with collective power, and seeing yourself act with others. As we rebuild our communities, let's do it in a way that honors our people, our traditions, our heritage. Let's come together by honoring and deepening our community inheritance. For when we do, we create the power to exist in our fullest form and to give in our most caring way. The forum will give you the opportunity to hear from many diverse Latino voices from across the generations, national origin, color, race, sexual orientation, gender, language, and many other intersectionalities that make everyone uniquely and apologetically them, just as you. You will hear how people build their individual power, how they contribute to collective power. Others will share their stories. They will inspire you, make you shed a tear. They will fill you with pride. We will have entertainment, getting you off your seat and loosening it up your body a little bit more, because it is going to be a 3-hour program. And we will also recognize our community leaders. As you listen, take notes, reflect and ask yourself, how will I create community inheritance in myself, in my family, in my community? How will I act differently? Sit back, find a comfortable place around the table or the couch, gather your family, and be present with us as we begin this journey of rebuilding, reimagining, and of visualizing a great Latino Colorado community. I also want to thank the team at LCFC, Rachel, Marisa, Alexis, Priscilla, Daniela, Diana, and Brenda, the people who I am fortunate to work with and who have put this great forum together for you. I would now like to introduce a great friend, someone who has taught me a lot about doing transformational community work, never losing spirit or motivation despite how crazy things may be, and someone who is always thinking about us. She's a person who wants to see a strong Latino community, who believes in the work of the Latino Community Foundation, and who wants Latinos to be bold and courageous in their work so that we have the strength and the power to fight against inequities in English or in Spanish. A person who fights every day to eradicate the inequities faced by all people of color. Therefore, it is my pleasure to introduce to you Karen McNeil Miller, President and CEO of the Colorado Health Foundation, who will also welcome you and share some insight in community empowerment. Gracias.
Thank you, Carlos. And a virtual greeting to you and everyone that's watching. The Colorado Health Foundation is delighted to once again be a sponsor of this conference, and particularly we're excited about this topic of language justice. Now, I certainly don't have any firsthand experience of what it's like to experience the injustice of being a primary or exclusive Spanish speaker. But as a Black woman, I certainly do understand and know what injustice looks like, what it sounds like, and what it feels like. And so anything we can do to eliminate that injustice, we are with you. We're in the middle of this pandemic. That's why we can't be together. And this pandemic has had such negative effects on both our communities. And so when I hear people say they can't wait to get back to normal, I say, not me, not if you're talking about that normal, because that normal wasn't so good for a lot of people. I can only imagine that as a primary or exclusive Spanish speaker, that old normal meant that I wouldn't be able to communicate with my children's teachers or my physicians or my employer or a store clerk. So that old normal didn't work. It didn't work for everyone. And so if it doesn't work for you, then it doesn't work for anyone. So I want to be a part with you to create that new normal. The new normal that is beyond just reopening our communities or rebuilding our communities, but is about reimagining our communities. And that reimagining includes that everyone should have the right to be able to communicate in the language that's most comfortable to them. So at the Colorado Health Foundation, we applaud you for this topic. Not only do we stand with you on this topic, but we will fight with you on this topic. This topic and any injustice we want to eradicate: racism, language, nationalism, LGBTQ. We want to eradicate all the injustice. So thank you for holding this conference. Thank you for taking on this important topic. And thank you for letting us at the Colorado Health Foundation be a part of it. It's important. I'm excited about the rest of the conference. And I know it's going to be wonderful. And thank you for giving me the opportunity to spend just a few minutes with you.
Buenos dias. I'm Gloria Schoch, and I'm honored to be the board chair of LCFC and also the executive director of the BF Foundation and director of global impact at BF Corporation. We all know fostering Latino organizations is essential to building strong communities. Through grant making, programs, and events, LCFC is helping build the organizational capabilities of Latino-led and Latino-serving organizations while cultivating a pipeline of leaders who can impart meaningful change through their deep commitment to transforming our communities. I hope this forum is a powerful opportunity for all of you to strengthen your networks, engage with old and new friends, and make new connections for mutual empowerment, collective impact, and success. And I hope it's a great opportunity to virtually share ideas, stretch your perspectives, and have meaningful dialogue to rebuild our future together and write the next chapter for Latino Coloradans. Now it's my distinct pleasure to introduce our next speaker, Colorado Governor Jared Polis. Let me share a little bit about the governor's background. Governor Polis is an entrepreneur, education leader, and public servant. Born in Colorado, he started his first business, American Information Systems, out of his college dorm room. By the time he was 30, he had launched 3 successful companies and was named Entrepreneur of the Year. Following his business success, Governor Polis committed himself to making sure other Coloradans had the opportunity to pursue their dreams, most notably through the creation of startups and his commitment to education. He served 6 years on the State Board of Education and founded several public charter schools for at-risk youth, including the New America School, which helps immigrants earn their high school diploma. Governor Polis served as U.S. Representative for Colorado's 2nd Congressional District before becoming Governor of Colorado in 2019. He and his partner Marlon and their 2 children are all avid Rockies fans. Governor, over to you.
Hello, LCFC. I want to thank you for all of your great work on behalf of the Latino community. I'm Governor Jared Polis, and this is a challenging time for Colorado, America, frankly, the world. It's the biggest pandemic in a century, and it has disproportionately and is disproportionately impacting people of color and people who work in essential jobs to put food on their table, often putting themselves at additional risk, as well as people with underlying health conditions. That's why I've been so inspired by the response of Colorado's Latino community, doing great work on the mask wearing, reporting to us when employers aren't practicing the kinds of social distance and safety practices that are needed. We've really made great strides, but the virus is still among us, and we need to continue to be safe to protect our loved ones and ourselves over the next few months until there are better treatments or a vaccine, which we hope is available by the end of the year, with widespread usage early next year. Colorado is a very diverse state. I believe in a Colorado for all. That means that no matter who you are, no matter where you live, you add to the cultural and economic fabric of our state. In our Latino community, descendants of Spanish settlers whose families have been here 500 years and people who arrived last week from Mexico or Venezuela are all a critical part of Colorado for all. Latinos power our economy from one corner to the other. And it's important that we recognize and celebrate the contributions that Latino Coloradans have made, are making, and will continue to make. I know that as we move past the health side of this crisis and move towards the economic response, we're going to make sure that this is a resilient economy that benefits everyone, right? As we seek to have better paying jobs. We passed a measure already that I signed into law that makes sure that every worker in Colorado has at least 5 days of paid sick leave, particularly important for service industry workers who didn't have it before. So I'm excited. While it's a challenging time, sometimes out of those challenges, it can bring out the best in us as people, within our families, within our communities, the best of us as a society. And I know that when we improve things in that new status quo, that we'll do things in new and better and different ways, we'll be better. It's been a tough year. But together, we're going to get through this. Together, we're going to build back stronger than before. And I want to thank all of you for being such a vibrant, important force here in Colorado. Thank you.
Thank you, Governor Polis. It is our honor to have you with us today. Our community has gone through so much during this pandemic, which is why it is even more so important to have events like this one. And it wouldn't be possible without the support of corporations like Molson Coors Beverage Company. Please help me welcome their Community Affairs Manager, Kayla Garcia.
Thank you, Sonia, for the kind introduction. And thank you, LCFC, for bringing us all together and for being amazing partners. I'm Kayla Garcia with Molson Coors Beverage Company. For nearly 150 years, we have been brewing our beers right here in Colorado, and we will continue to brew and invest in our community for years to come, as Colorado is the cornerstone to our history and our heritage. At Molson Coors, we are committed to advancing educational and economic development opportunities in communities where we operate. And we recognize the importance of diverse perspectives, backgrounds, and supporting our Latino community. Now, I'm excited to take you on a mini tour of Colorado, where we will visit communities in the San Luis Valley, Mountain Region, Fort Morgan, Fort Collins, and Denver. LCFC's vision is a Colorado where Latinos are united in advancing their collective power. Through its work, LCFC builds on the influence and power of Latino communities throughout Colorado, from west of the Rocky Mountains to south of Pueblo to north of Fort Collins and throughout the Eastern Plains. They do this by investing in civic and economic development opportunities, community health and wellness, and by elevating existing work of individual leaders, nonprofit organizations, and regional communities. I can't wait for you to see a snapshot of the diversity that exists throughout our beautiful state of Colorado. Take it away.
Hi, I'm Grace Lobato. I'm a senior at Centauri High School, and I'm from the San Luis Valley.
Hi, I'm Nikki Sandoval, and I'm from the San Luis Valley.
Hi, I'm Annalie Vargas, and I'm from the San Luis Valley.
Hi, I'm Madison Lobato, and I'm from the San Luis Valley.
Hi, I'm Jamie Dominguez, and I'm from the San Luis Valley.
Hi, I'm Crystal Ray Dominguez, and I'm from the San Luis Valley.
And we are friends of the Latino Community Foundation of Colorado.
Hello, my name is Antonia Peña, president of Visión Latina, a community group in the mountains in Garfield County, a group dedicated to representing immigrant families. Thank you to the Latino Community Foundation for the support. Also, don't forget to vote this year. Visión Latina sends its regards to the entire forum from the mountains. My name is Graciela Duran. I'm secretary of Visión Latina, a community organization. Thank you to the Latino Community Foundation for this great invitation. A warm greeting to the community. Thank you. Hello, my name is Claudia Delgado, and I'm a volunteer at Visión Latina. I'm very happy to be invited by the Latino Community Foundation. Greetings to everyone from the mountains.
Hola, soy Jenny de Colombia. Hello from the beautiful Fort Collins, where we have been guiding our community members through the PBT Nutrition Assistance Benefit and getting them enrolled in the Reduced Meal Program. Thank you for having us here.
Hello, everybody. My name is Max, and we're excited to be participating in this year's virtual LCFC, Our Story Forum. We want to just encourage everybody to get involved and to get out the vote efforts during this election.
Yay! Get out the votes. Yes.
Yes.
Hi, my name is Hilda. I am a founder member of Alianza and helped start the SB 255 license program, in which we guide our community members to obtain their license successfully. Thank you for having us.
And I'm Patricia, and together we are Alianza NORCO. I want to encourage all of you to support our statewide efforts for an immigration legal defense fund. We're sending all our Latinx family in Colorado a big shout out from Fort Collins. Woohoo!
Hello, my name is Dolores del Campo, and I'm from Fort Morgan. I'm a part of the Brave Women, Mujeres Valientes, and joining me today are some of them. One is Araceli, Zulema, who when we say jump, she says how high. Carolina, who brings us lots of information about health programs. Esmeralda, who fights for young people in sports. Perla, who's our Fort Morgan Selena and provides a lot of help for Latinos. Marcela, who is our student leader and worker. And Citlali, who will be our next city leader. We are the Mujeres Valientes of Fort Morgan.
¡Uhú! Hola, bienvenido a todos. I'm Nita Gonzales, a brown woman, mestiza, Chicana, born and raised in Denver, Colorado. I'm honored to join you today as a supporter of the Latino Community Foundation, along with mi familia y mi comunidad. because Denver had the crusade for justice that launched the fight against discrimination, racial inequality, and social injustice. Denver's raza has come a long way, but we still have a long way to go. Our community has been the nexus of activism, working in unity with other communities of color to ensure our place at the table. So we continue to organize in the spirit of our ancestors. Now is the time together to create a unity that can move us from words to action, from reformation to transformation. Mil gracias to mi familia y comunidad that are here with me today, and thank you for being part of this work.
Now that was awesome to see all the different regions. It is so terrific to see our communities coming together as one. It's rare to see a foundation that connects regions all across the state. Now let's take a moment to recognize the corporations that supported our virtual watch parties. Muchísimas gracias a the Colorado Health Foundation, the Colorado Housing and Finance Authority, AT&T, Molson Coors Beverage Company, Alpine Bank, Denver Art Museum, and the University of Colorado. I have the honor to welcome our next guest speaker from the University of Colorado, Assistant Vice President Tony Salazar.
Thank you, Sonia. Hello, everyone. My name is Tony Salazar, and I am the Assistant Vice President of Engagement at the University of Colorado. CU is very excited to partner with the Latino Community Foundation of Colorado to sponsor today's Our Story Forum. During this difficult time in the world, and as COVID has disproportionately impacted our Latino community, CU is taking action to ensure the growing Latino student population has the opportunity to pursue the dream of obtaining a college education. The impact of this pandemic on people of color, especially Latinos, is in significant part due to the historical underrepresentation of our students in higher education. Other factors like housing stability, uneven resources in K-12 education, and the increasing tendency to treat higher education as a private good rather than as a public good also come into play. However, rather than treat these factors as excuses, CU is called upon to do a better job of attracting, retaining, and graduating Latino students, which elevates our community success and also our income potential, as well as preparing the next workforce in Colorado. It is vital for our state and our nation to have the talent necessary for our future economic vibrancy. CU's diversity, equity, and inclusion efforts are among the university's top priorities and comprise one of the 4 pillars of our new strategic plan. CU President Mark Kennedy, my boss, recently presented a plan to the Board of Regents for implementing roughly 25 DEI initiatives across CU's 4 campuses this academic year. Hiring CU's first Chief Diversity Officer was among President Kennedy's earliest personnel decisions after assuming his position in 2019. CU is committed to increasing student, faculty, and staff diversity to ensure a rich exchange of ideas and a welcoming and supportive environment for all people in the university community. Our commitment is displayed on our campuses where we are celebrating one of the most diverse classes of first-year students in CU history. In addition, our downtown urban campus, CU Denver, is on the verge of proudly becoming CU's first Hispanic serving institution. This is a special designation granted to a university that is serving 25% or more of our undergrads as Latinos. We have made progress, but we still have much more work to do in addition to a lot of listening and learning. The future success of CU hinges on increased results in attracting and graduating Latinos, as we will collectively represent over 1/3 of Colorado's population by 2030. I am now honored to introduce our next keynote speaker, Mr. Arturo Vargas. Arturo is the Chief Executive Officer of NALEO Education Fund, a national nonprofit that promotes the full participation of Latinos in civil life. Arturo also serves as the CEO of NALEO, a national membership organization of Latino policymakers and their supporters. Prior to joining NALEO, Arturo held various positions at the Mexican American Legal Defense and Educational Fund and was the Senior Education Policy Analyst at the National Council of La Raza in Washington, D.C. He is nationally recognized as an expert in Latino demographic trends, electoral participation, voting rights, the census, and redistricting. He holds a master's degree in education and a bachelor's degree in history and Spanish from Stanford University. Please join me in welcoming Mr. Arturo Vargas.
Thank you, Tony. And thank you to the Latino Community Foundation of Colorado and for the opportunity to join you for the Our Story Forum and to share with you some thoughts about where we are as a Latino community as we approach election 2020. I am the CEO of NALEO, and we were founded by the late Congressman Edward R. Roybal, who was one of the pioneers of American politics, not just Latino politics, but American politics. And he took on issues that many people were afraid to touch. Things like the McCarthyism of the era of the 1950s, AIDS when it first came on the scene in the 1980s, as well as promoting full Latino participation in the American political process. And he did it in a way where he reached across the aisle and he worked in a way that made us all proud because of his dignity in how he governed. And so I often think to myself, what would Congressman Roybal say about our politics today? And what would he say about how the Latino community is being treated today? 2020, it's not 19, it's 2020. And it occurs to me that if I ever had the opportunity to ask him that, he would look me in the eye and say, why do you think I started NALEO? Why do you think that civic engagement organizations exist? Organizations like the Latino Community Foundation of Colorado, NALEO Educational Fund, and so many other Latino and non-Latino civic organizations at the national, regional, and local levels. We've all been established to help ensure that we perfect American democracy. And American democracy is exactly what 2020 is all about. I have shared with my team at NALEO Educational Fund that 2020 is NALEO's moment because it is democracy's moment. We have the decennial census occurring in 2020 and a very important election as well. Now, make no mistake about it, the 2020 census is at serious risk of not being the most fair and accurate census that we've had in our lifetimes. In fact, it's at risk of being a failure. I hope that doesn't happen. But we are doing everything we can as the Census Bureau continues its work and proceeds with delivering apportionment data and the redistricting data that they accurately reflect the Latino population and all populations in the United States. And we need to remain vigilant and hold the Census Bureau accountable for the best possible numbers. I know we've all worked together to ensure that everybody filled out their census forms, and there were some real challenges in 2020. But I think we gave it the best shot possible, given all of the curveballs that were thrown at us, including the COVID-19 pandemic. And in just a few days, we're going to have the election, an important election. You know, I hate it when people say, this is the most important election of our lifetimes, because I believe all elections are important. But this is truly a unique election because there have been so many unique events leading up to it. It is one of the most important elections in terms of Latinos being able to participate. We project at the NALEO Educational Fund that some 14.6 million Latinos will vote in 2020. Let me stress that that's a floor. That's not the maximum of Latinos will vote, but it's at least that number. And that would be a 15% increase over the 12.7 million Latinos who voted in the 2016 election. Now, we were going into 2020 with some real momentum because the midterm elections of 2018 saw nearly 12 million Latinos vote. What's extraordinary about that number is that we had 12.6 million Latinos vote in a presidential election of 2016 and 12 million vote in a non-presidential midterm election in 2018. That's unheard of. The last time we saw almost no drop-off between a presidential and a midterm election was in 1994, comparing 1992 to 1994. And there were some serious issues on the ballot in 1994, especially in California. Those of you who are as old as I am will remember Proposition 187, the granddaddy of all anti-immigrant measures that have been passed. Since then, we've seen SB 1070 in Arizona, SB 4 in Texas, and a number of other developments. We think that that environment helped propel the turnout we saw in 2018. So we have been very excited as we were working towards 2020 that we would see an historic increase in the number of Latinos to vote in the presidential election. Now, 14.6 million Latinos voting in 2020 will be a record, but it's not good enough. And I make that very clear to everybody. Yes, it'll be the largest number of Latinos ever to vote in an election, but I also know it is out of some 30 to 32 million Latino US citizen adults in the country today that can vote, should they get registered to vote and exercise their right to vote. But there are many barriers that remain to Latino voting, and 2020 will be an extraordinary year when it comes to those barriers, in large part because of the pandemic that we're experiencing. Already we're seeing the stresses of COVID-19 affecting Latino households and the way they participate civically, the stresses of infection rates, of hospitalization rates, death rates, and the devastating economic impact that it's had on Latino households. You know, it's been very difficult to cut through that noise as we have tried to get Latinos to fill out their census forms. I'm afraid we may have that same kind of challenge in convincing Latinos to cast their ballots this year as well, because of everything else that they're facing. And the pandemic has also made it more difficult for people to register to vote. Many folks have registered or do get registered at agencies like the Department of Motor Vehicles and other social service agencies that have been closed because of the pandemic in the months leading up to the election. We know that there has been a great deal of misinformation that has been shared. And somebody recently shared with me that in South Florida in particular, that there is a great deal of chatter on social media about this election, and many believing that there is a great deal of misinformation that are misinforming our public. So we need to be very careful about that. We think there may be an enthusiasm effect that COVID is having to dampen people's interest in the election. We'll see how that plays out. But one of the biggest challenges we will have that we need to work on together is to make sure that everybody knows how to cast a safe and effective vote, whether they choose to do it from home through a vote by mail process, or they decide to show up in person. Now, voting by mail is something that is becoming increasingly popular all across the country, and certainly in Colorado. So in Colorado, this may not be as much of an issue as it is in other parts of the country. But if you are a first-time voter, voting by mail, it's not an easy process. You know, I hold a master's degree, and I found it challenging to figure out exactly where do I write my address? Where do I sign? What goes into which envelope? And am I returning it in time? If you get any of those things wrong, it's very likely that your ballot may not be counted or may be disqualified. So one of the things we need to make sure we do this year is that we have a robust voter education program to ensure everybody who chooses to vote by mail, so that they vote safely and they don't take a risk by showing up at a polling location, is able to do so correctly. But if they do choose to vote in person, then we want to make sure that election officials are doing all they can to make sure that that vote in person experience is safe and secure, and that voters feel comfortable showing up in person and don't have to wait hours in line in order to cast the ballot. Now, all of these are challenges on top of the normal challenges that we have seen Latinos face in voting. So 2020 is no ordinary year. And at NALEO Educational Fund, we're doing everything we can to provide tools to people to be able to vote and find out the information about the process. We have joined with the League of Women Voters in developing a bilingual website called vote411.org. If you go to that website, you can find out if you're registered to vote. You can find out how to register to vote in your particular state, what are the deadlines for voting, the requirements for voting. And you can find out everything about what's on your ballot in your state. Again, that's at vote411.org. The other thing we're doing at NALEO Educational Fund is that we're activating our election protection program. We are part of the National Election Protection Coalition, where we're working with sister organizations across communities, Asian American organizations, African American organizations, and other Latino organizations, working with legal groups to make sure that we're able to provide individuals with a recourse should they need help when it comes time to vote. They can call us at 888-VEYVOTA, VEYVOTA. That means go and vote in Spanish. That's 888-839-8682. And we will have trained bilingual operators at the ready so that if anybody experiences any problem in the act of voting or they have any question, they can call us. And we are in contact with election officials and attorneys to make sure that everybody can get their answers to their questions. And if there's any problem in people being discouraged or told they're not registered, or that they are not being informed about the right to a provisional ballot, that they are able to do so. So remember that, 888-839-8682. The other thing that we're doing at NALEO Educational Fund is that we are carrying out a tracking poll. So every week for the 9 weeks leading up to this election, we surveyed 400 Latino registered voters. That's 400 different Latino registered voters every week. And what we have learned is that this is no ordinary election for Latinos. First of all, they're paying attention. And I think that this actually is contradicting a little bit of what we saw with the census experience in the pandemic, because Latinos are paying attention to the candidates, they're paying attention to the issues, and they're being energized by the conversations that are happening in the nation around the role of Latinos, the role of Latino immigrants, and the role of institutional racism. And the Black Lives Matter movement has had an impact, especially among Latino youth. One of the things that we've seen from our poll consistently every week is that 75 to 80% of those Latino registered voters say that they are highly likely to vote. That is so reassuring to me, that there's this high level of interest in voting this year. What's remarkable to me, however, is that when they have been asked, what are the most important issues you're following in this election? The number one issue, it's not immigration. It's not even the economy or healthcare. It's COVID-19. And that makes sense because of the way that COVID-19 has disproportionately affected our community. And Latinos will be voting in this election with COVID-19 on their mind of how it's affected their families. And we'll be looking at candidates up and down the ballot to see who is actually addressing the issues in our communities. So don't come talking to Latinos if you're a candidate just about immigration reform. Come talk to us about the issues that our families are experiencing day to day, because all issues that are important to Americans are important to Latino issues. So that's where we are today in 2020, democracy's moment. We'll see where we end up with the census. We'll see how many Latinos participate in this election. But remember, we're in this for the long term. There will be another election next year, midterms in 2022, and another presidential election in 2024. And we need to keep that foot on the pedal. We can't let up on encouraging civic participation in our communities. We're all in this together. That's why NALEO was established in 1976. This is why the Latino Community Foundation of Colorado was established as well. We all need to work together to ensure that our community has a full voice in our democracy. The only way we can perfect American democracy and hold this country true to its values is if we have the full participation of Latinos in all civic life. So thank you for all you do in Colorado. I'm so happy to have been able to join you for this Our Story Forum. Congratulations. Thank you.
Muchísimas gracias, señor Vargas. Tiene toda la razón. We have to go out and vote. Thank you again por tus palabras y apoyo a nuestra comunidad. Across our nation, you bring strength and opportunity to many. Now, I'm so excited about our next segment, part 3, Our Voice, Our Movement. We've brought together leaders from 4 different generations speaking on how they envision the future of Latino activism. This is going to be good. The Executive Director of Servicios de la Raza, Rudy Gonzales, State Senator Julie Gonzales, the Executive Director of COPA, Lisette Chacon, and Core Leader of AJUA, Alan Munoz.
Hello, I'm Rudy Gonzales, Executive Director of Servicios de la Raza, 48-year-old self-determinant, autonomous Latino nonprofit, Chicano nonprofit, founded by Chicanos and Chicanas in 1972, which is a nonprofit that was pretty much a birth child of a movement that I grew up in called the Chicano movement. And, you know, running this agency, I hope and I pray that I have continued to not just reignite, but re-energize this agency in its responsibilities and duties to advocate for Latino, Latina communities, Chicano, Chicana communities, or whatever we call ourselves, in the areas of justice, equity, and peace. I grew up in the Chicano movement, and I talk about this in honor of my father and my mother, both who are now passed, Rodolfo Corky Gonzales and Geraldine Gonzales, and who provided the leadership, not just here in Denver, in the state of Colorado, but across this country, and helped define the movement, the Chicano movement, helped define the spiritual, the philosophical, and the conceptual ideas and inspiration for the Chicano movement and Movimiento Chicano as it washed across the Southwest and then the nation. And I grew up in that time. I'm a child of the movement. I hope I've remained true to that as the Executive Director for Servicios de la Raza. And, you know, in terms of Latino advocacy and activism, we are, Servicios, I feel, is under my leadership, remains steadfast and is one of the strongest organizations out in Colorado that is working on behalf of our communities and bringing both a physical presence and a intellectual presence to bodies of decision making at both elected county, state, municipal, even federal levels around areas of multiple determinants of health, determinants of social welfare, determinants of socioeconomic status, all of these different issues that are affecting our communities and now have continued to have really intensified under the current federal leadership and during this pandemic, the current pandemic. You know, so I've never been uninvolved in the movement. I've never been uninvolved in our quest for justice, equity, and peace in our communities. I've never been uninvolved in, you know, the fight against racism and hatred, indifference, and oppression. And we are going to continue to do that work. How I see and what I see about the future is that we become more unified. We coalesce better as a people, Latino, Latinas. Whether we're so provincial, we are mestizo people. We're indigenous people of this hemisphere. We are descendants of the first peoples of this hemisphere. As such, that's how we need to organize and stop thinking we're from Central America, South America, Mexico, or, you know, and start thinking as an indigenous people and coalesce like that. The other thing is that we are ethnic majorities in many cities, municipalities, counties, states, and we need to start organizing with BIPOC, right? Black, Indigenous, people of color, coming together. And that's one thing we do at Servicios, is that we are a convening organization. Currently, we are working to organize multiple communities of color to address the common issues that faces each and every day here. So that's where I see the future of the activism going, is first coalescing and really getting strong as a unit, and then also bringing in all the other like-minded people, communities, coalitions to work in the name of justice, equity, and peace. Thank you.
I sit before you as currently the only Latina serving in the Colorado State Senate. I'm only the 7th state senator that has had the privilege and honor to serve in the entire history of the state of Colorado. And yet, if you would have asked me 3 years ago if I would have ever considered running for office, I would have laughed in your face. You know, 5 years ago, I was working at an immigration law firm as a paralegal, working right alongside clients as they were navigating, trying to stay in this country with their families and their loved ones, and navigating court systems that were oftentimes broken. And as a paralegal, I was just doing everything that I could within the legal context to support them as they fought to stay with their families. And I was also an activist out in community. Oftentimes, more often than not, I was actually protesting for better rights and for more equality and for better treatment for Latinos, for low-wage people, for immigrants. And it had never occurred to me to actually step up and run for office. And one day I went to a training, actually, that prepared people to think about running for office. And I thought about this in terms of, well, how can I go to understand how elected officials make their decisions? But that's not for me. And so I went to the training, and it actually opened up a whole world for me and exposed me to this idea that, you know what? Lawmakers are just people too, and we need more of our community to step up and to take that leadership. We need people like us stepping into positions of power. And all too often, for a whole host of reasons, women, people of color, folks from working class backgrounds, immigrants, we say, oh, well, somebody else will do that, but I won't do that. And so in 2017, after President Trump had been elected, and after we'd seen so many really devastating changes that impacted our immigrant community, you know what? I said, hey, if I run and I lose, at least I will fight a good fight. And so I ran, and for the majority of the race, I was the only woman in my race. And for the entirety of my race, I was also the only person of color. And I ended up winning my district in a 5-way primary, and then in my general election, I had the strongest win margin in the state. And having that seat of power doesn't mean that I'm somehow magically better or stronger or more engaged or more informed than anybody. It actually just means that normal people, everyday people can get elected and can win. And what I'm really excited about is the fact that we have right now a historic number of Latinos serving in our Colorado General Assembly. There's 13 of us. And yet when you zoom out from that, we have been able to make tremendous power and policy changes at the Capitol. We have banned ICE from our courthouses. We have passed other pro-immigrant legislation. We have made advancements for educational equity and opportunity for dreamers and for all Latino students. And yet, when you look at the numbers, it's a historic 13, and yet we're still not even at parity. Colorado is over 20% Latino. And so we have much more work to do. And that, to me, is the future of activism. is for normal folks, everyday people like me and you, to step up and to continue to serve our communities in the ways that we need. We need more people stepping up for school board, for city council, and we also need people on the outside too. Folks continuing to organize our community, to expose the injustice, and to inform and educate legislators. You need both sides, on the outside of power and on the inside of power. And so that's what I encourage you all to do.
Hi, mi nombre es Lisa Chacon. I'm the Executive Director of Colorado People's Alliance. Buen día a todos. I want to share a little bit about my story. As an organizer, we believe that our stories are the most important tool that we have in order to advocate for change in our communities. And so I was born and raised in Mexico. I moved to this country when I was 12 years old. And when I first moved here, I experienced a lot of discrimination and racism because of my background and because of where I was from. I had instances at 13 years old where I was pushed south because I needed to go back to where I belonged. I was called wetback. And so all of those experiences really pushed me to get involved and do more. And I was a Latino mentor in high school for other students. I helped other freshman students throughout their freshman year, and got really, really active as a young immigrant here in the state. And then later, when it came time for college, it was around the same time that the big immigration marches were happening in 2006. And so I got involved in the immigrant rights movement and have been in the immigrant rights movement for over a decade now. But also as a Latina, I believe that our community is not a single issue community. We are a multi-issue community that is impacted by different things. My dad has been working at a meat packing plant for the last 20 years. He should have retired years ago, but he hasn't because he is unable to afford to retire. My mom got really sick when I was in high school, and she ended up having to take a trip to the emergency room. And I saw her sign the papers to get released that night because she knew she couldn't afford to stay in the hospital and pay for it. And then later I saw her work at a fast food restaurant just to pay over $10,000 in debt that she had from one night stay at the hospital. And so my family has been really impacted by an economic system that doesn't work for us, by an immigration system that continues to deport and terrorize our families, by a healthcare system that it's not built to help people like my family, and by an education system that also is not meant to work for us and help us. And so because of that, because of my personal experiences, the experience that my family has had, I've made my dedication and my activism to be fully around organizing with people who are directly impacted by the issues to create change in our communities. And so through our organization, Colorado People's Alliance, we work on economic justice issues, climate justice issues, and immigrant justice issues. And we work to ensure that the economy works for all of us, to ensure that we're supporting workers in our state, specifically in this time of the pandemic, to ensure that we end environmental racism and that we actually support our communities that are being impacted by corporate polluters like Suncor. And that we create an immigration system that values our humanity, and that we end detention and the incarceration of our immigrant community. And so we do all of this because we believe that there's a better Colorado that we can envision for all of us. And we believe that organizing is the key. We believe that our stories as directly impacted people and as organizers can be the key to move us and create the change that we need to see. And we believe that our Latino community, our immigrant community, and people of color overall are the key to the solutions. Those who are closest to the pain are closest to the solution. And we're doing organizing in a way that's transformational. So really building deep relationships with one another to create the solutions that we know that we can make in our community.
Hello, everyone. My name is Alan Munoz Valenciano, and I am a DACA recipient. That means I'm part of the immigrant community and the Latinx community here in Colorado. And I say Colorado because currently I'm at Fort Collins studying at CSU, and I'm majoring in sociology, but concentrating in criminology and criminal justice. Originally, I'm from Calillo, Aguascalientes, Mexico, and I immigrated with my mom back in 2002 to Rifle, Colorado. And growing up in Rifle, it was tough for me, especially. It's a really small rural town full of conservatives and to be frank, a lot of racism. Growing up, I was subject to a lot of racist comments, racist viewpoints, and always felt like I was the odd person out, especially being undocumented. I always felt like I could never tell anyone who my identity really was because one, I didn't know who I really was growing up, and I didn't want to make any sort of fuss or put myself out there if people knew that I was undocumented. So I went thinking like that through K through 12. But fortunately, when I graduated high school, I met this group called AJUA. And AJUA is a grassroots organization, and AJUA stands for La Asociación de Jóvenes Unidos en Acción, which is the Association of Youth United in Action. And AJUA is a social justice group. AJUA, we fight for rights of our community, we fight for education, and we fight to make sure that we have a seat at the table. But with AJUA, I was able to find myself. I was able to finally understand what it meant to be an immigrant, what it meant to be a Latino, and the importance that esta lucha, this fight that we're fighting day in and day out, the importance that has on our entire community. And that's something that AJUA does and something that I'm really grateful for everyone in AJUA. Currently, I am a core leader for AJUA, but I really enjoy working with every single one of our members because every single one of our members has that drive and has that passion to make sure that we're fighting for equality and justice here in the United States. AJUA is mainly focused in the western part of Colorado, through Parachute, Colorado, down into Aspen. But we have a really big impact, I think, across the state. Because of that impact, I think we're able to bring a lot to the table, and especially in our own community, and that's our main focus. We want to make sure that the Latinx community and the immigrant community down in our part of Colorado is prepared, is educated, and is willing to continue the fight. We do that in a number of ways, but mainly we do it through education, through workshops, through community meetings, that kind of stuff. And we also do it by creating a support system for our immigrant community, to where we come together as AJUA to make sure we talk things out, make sure everyone's doing okay. And we take that into our community to make sure that our families and our neighbors and that kind of stuff are doing just as well. And those are two big components of AJUA. And that last part, that support system, I think that's what the future of Latino activism looks like. We have to be there for each other, I think, more than ever. There's a lot of division in the world. So as the immigrant community, as the Latino community, we have to make sure that we're there for one another. For me, looking back at it, I owe it to a lot of people, mainly my parents, because they were the ones that, they cut off their wings, but they still showed me how to fly. And I owe a lot to them. But I also owe a lot to the people I don't know who were fighting this fight long before I was born. And because of their fight, I'm able to be in the position that I'm today, going to CSU, being a DACA recipient, and being able to take the next steps into Latino activism and social justice. And then when I think about it, I owe a lot to the people that are going to come after me to make sure that they're prepared, that they're educated, and that they're ready to continue this fight once I'm gone. So I owe it to them, and that's what the future of activism looks like, to make sure that there's a close connection and close ties between all different generations of Latinos in the Latinx community, and to make sure that the fight keeps on going, the fight never ends, and that we're there for each other more so than ever before. And we got to understand that it's for la raza and by la raza. So we got to keep it going for us.
Muchísimas gracias a todos. It is so inspiring to see young people tell us how empowered and engaged they are in our community, truly, truly empowering. For the rest of us, man, what great energy to go into our next segment, which is the good part, la música. So we're gonna hear sounds of cumbia, mambo, son, salsa, blues, and rock and roll. A big virtual welcome to Making Movies.
Saludos. My name is Enrique.
And I'm Juan Carlos.
And we're the better looking, wiser, older half of Making Movies.
That's right.
Yeah, we missed our other half of the band, but in these COVID times, it's nice to still make music for you all. Thank you to the Latino Community Foundation for inviting us to be a part of this, and Rachel for inviting us specifically. We believe in the work you all do. We put those beliefs into the music. We had the honor of writing this song and recording it with the great master mentor, Ruben Blades. The song is called No Te Calles, and if by chance you don't speak Spanish, this song means raise your voice, don't let them silence you, because if we all raise our voices, we can build a world that is more just. Listo.
Buscando una verdad que no debe morir, ayúdala a salir, respira, respira, detrás de una traición. Se muere la nación, no hay héroes que aplaudir, ni huellas que seguir. Ay, no te calles, sal a la calle y no te calles, sal a la calle. Y no te calles, sal a la calle y no te calles. Pregúntate por qué perdiste toda fe y tu amor a dónde fue. Te canceló el carnet. Sal a la calle y no te calles. Sal a la calle y no te calles. La corrupción ataca, ahoga con su trampa el político ladrón que destruye la nación. Sal a la calle y no te calles. Sal a la calle y no te calles. La corrupción ataca, ahoga con su trampa el político ladrón que destruye la nación. El silencio oculta la verdad, como el odio en nuestra humanidad. El gran error quedará atrás, llena tus pulmones, respira y no te calles.
What a tremendous message and performance. Thank you so much, Making Movies. Y si te quedaste con ganas de mover el bote, don't worry, they're coming up later in the show as well. And now to continue our program with the presentation of the Soul of Leadership Award. Welcome LCFC board member Eric Ishiwara.
Thank you, Sonia, for that warm welcome. Hello, my name is Eric Ishiwara, and I'm a member of the Board of Directors for the Latino Community Foundation of Colorado. It's my honor today to present Ricardo Perez with the Soul of Leadership Award. The Soul of Leadership Award pays homage to Latino leaders or organizations that have demonstrated courageous leadership, embody high standards of integrity, and are deeply committed to the advancement of Latinos. Ricardo, the award selection felt strongly that you embodied the true sense of what the Soul Award means because of your courageous leadership, always with passion and always serving and amplifying the voices of the Latino community. Please see this award as an appreciation for the many leadership roles that you have played over the past decades, which have encompassed several countries. As for your work in Colorado, you have helped elevate the engagement of Latinos in the Western Slope to new heights and created a cadre of new local leaders. We are appreciative for the tireless work and for your commitment and passion of being a servant leader to the Latino community.
I would like to thank Latino Community Foundation for all of their support in community leadership and all of its organizations in the state of Colorado. I am very grateful for this nomination, but I would like to invite all of you to extend this award to our immigrant workers, especially those who are currently working in the agriculture industry. With the pandemic, these workers have been called essential, but they have been left out of all of the recent changes from the Department of Labor in the state of Colorado regarding the basic worker protections related to wages, housing, and other benefits, basic benefits in our places of work. This is not a surprise. In this country, race is much more important than being an essential employee or a citizen or a human being. Our communities, our minority groups, we are under attack. We are witnessing the rapid dismantling of our institutions and democratic processes in this country. New practices are coming up and new policies are coming up of fascist systems, possibly in rural areas. This is much more obvious and aggressive compared to urban areas. Many of us live through these experiences in our country of origin, but we must do everything within our reach to remove it from home and from our neighbor's home. Latinos, we have power, and we have to use that power. We are a cultural force, an economic and political force. It is not enough to fight for our rights, but above all, we need to be able to use our responsibility in order to promote diversity and the values that we have brought from all parts of Hispanic America. It is those values, like that sense of equality, respect, faith, family, community, perseverance, resistance, cultural resistance. That is what's going to help us fight racism, discrimination, and inequality. This is what it means to rebuild the future together. The foundation has played a very important role in unifying and raising the Latino community voice. At the same time that the Latino community has grown in the state, we have seen the foundation grow to be a meeting point for Latinos and Latinas. We need each other in order to face such difficult times in our history, our collective history. But we trust that we will continue shoulder by shoulder facing challenges together. We are children of resistance culture, and we know how to rebuild our story. Our hopes will be together with all of the minority groups and our allies, the hope for change for a different society, an inclusive society with justice, respect for our diversity, which we have brought to the United States of North America, and we feel proud of being part of this country. Thank you all for being a part of the Latino Community Foundation family.
Wow, felicidades Ricardo, en verdad nos dices unas palabras que me ayudaron a reflexionar en lo que en verdad importa, los trabajadores del campo, nuestra comunidad, siempre, siempre mantenernos unidos, porque en esa unidad existe el poder, en esa appreciation for each other. Thank you so much, Ricardo. Well earned, and deserved award. So let's turn the page onto the next chapter. So we will begin part form, Our Healing, Our Rebuilding, with a truly special presentation, a community bendición. Señora Vigil is a blessed spirit and a community treasure. Join me in welcoming Teresa de Jesús Berlinda Vigil.
Thank you. I'm honored to be with all of you. At this time, we are looking to prayer. We're looking to hope. And I wanted to allow you to bless you as we bless our children when they go away from home. It's tradition with us. But this blessing, I want to go to all people who need prayer, especially the hard-hearted, the ones that won't open up to love, to hope, to sharing. First of all, we ask for forgiveness for what we've done to the earth. We want to blend with the earth again. So we ask forgiveness because healing doesn't come along unless there's forgiveness. We want to also ask our Creator to teach us what needs to be done, but to guide us so we know what to do and to give us the strength to keep going. And we offer this special blessing today, not only for today, not only for tomorrow, but always. And let us always do one good deed a day. It is power when you do that. And let us become love, have peace, harmony, compassion, joy.
Muchísimas gracias, señora Vigil, por esa bendición. LCFC is very fortunate to have a number of committed sponsors in corporations that work with LCFC. I now have the pleasure of welcoming one of those sponsors. Here's the Chief Financial Operating Officer of CHFA, the Colorado Housing and Finance Authority. Bienvenido, Thomas Bryan.
Muy buenos días, and thank you, Sonia, for that fantastic and very nice introduction. My name is Thomas Bryan, and I have the privilege of serving as the Chief Financial Officer for the Colorado Housing and Finance Authority, also known by many as CHFA. CHFA is honored to be able to sponsor the Latino Community Foundation in this year's Our Story Forum. On that topic of our story, I'm hoping you'll indulge me a little bit and allow me to share my own personal story and that of my employer. Ya hace 20 años que tuve la oportunidad de vivir en México, la Ciudad de México, por 2 años. And as you can tell, while I struggled to learn the language, things I didn't struggle to learn were 3 valuable lessons. One, that of the importance of family, community, and hard work. Those lessons I learned directly from the individuals I worked with and lived with on a daily basis while in Mexico. And those lessons I've been able to apply to my life and have landed me to where I am today. Now, fast forward to 20 years in serving and working with the Colorado Housing and Finance Authority, this organization supports those same values of family, community, and most importantly, hard work. CHFA was created for the sole purpose of investing in affordable housing and community development in the state of Colorado. It is our vision and very strong belief that everyone in Colorado, not just some, but everyone, has the opportunity for housing stability and economic prosperity. We believe strengthening the lives of Coloradans by offering programs that support homeownership and affordable rental housing, as well as by investing in Colorado's small businesses and nonprofit organizations, much like the Latino Community Foundation, not only strengthens our communities, but strengthens Colorado as a whole. In 2019, CHFA was able to serve and support over 10,000 homebuyers with the purchase of their home. 35% of those were Latino homebuyers. Into 2019, CHFA also supported the development of over 5,600 affordable rental housing units, 31% of which were occupied by Latino renters. CHFA also supported in 2019 the creation and or preservation of over 5,000 jobs, 26% of which supported minority-owned businesses. This year, CHFA was proud to reach a milestone in our home ownership campaign directed and focused on the Latino community. This year we launched Mi Hogar, a Spanish-speaking microsite, a Spanish language microsite that contains information about CHFA's homeownership programs and homebuyer education courses. We feel this is one of the very small ways in which we're trying to eliminate barriers to success for many of Coloradans. Now, to close my remarks, I'd like to give you one last thought to think about. While it's CHFA's vision to ensure that everyone in Colorado has the opportunity for housing stability and economic prosperity, we know this is not something we can do on our own. We need leaders just like you to help us in this effort. So while you attend today's forum and participate, I ask you to think about the following things. First, think about how you can become a leader in your community and support causes that you're passionate about. Share your knowledge and be a resource to others. Think about ways in which you can collaborate with partners who can help you create your own brand and create your own leadership style. And most importantly, I encourage you to show bold leadership, not only in times of crisis like we're experiencing today, but every day. Make bold leadership a part of your personal brand and your personal story. Again, thank you for having me here today, and please enjoy the forum. Now it's my privilege to introduce our keynote speaker, inaugural poet, Richard Blanco. To use Richard's words, he was made in Cuba, assembled in Spain, and imported to the USA. Born in Madrid to Cuban exile parents and later raised in Miami, Richard is the 5th presidential inaugural poet in US history. Even more impressive and unique about Richard is the fact that he is the youngest, first Latino, first immigrant, and first gay person to serve in such a role. He is the author of numerous poetry collections, as well as a children's book of his first inaugural poem, One Today. Richard's many honors include an Agnes Lynch Sterrett Poetry Prize, the E. Penn Beyond Margins Award, a Lambda Literary Award, the Patterson Poetry Prize, and 2 additional Maine Literary Awards. While working as an engineer during the day, Richard is driven by a desire to connect communities and to advance noble causes that transcend political divide. What an honor it is to be able for us to hear him today. So without further ado, please join me in welcoming inaugural poet, Richard Blanco.
Thanks, Latino Community Foundation, and hola, Colorado. It's my sincere pleasure and honor to be with all of you here, virtually, of course. Thanks to everyone responsible for putting this together, all those who have given us an opportunity to come together as one, as un pueblo unido. As you can imagine, writing can be a very solitary endeavor, more so now than ever. And so I'm grateful for this opportunity to connect with all of you. You are a gift to me in that respect. Thank you. Gracias. As you can imagine, my tenure as presidential inaugural poet, or PIP, as I like to say, transformed every part of my life. First, as a son of a working class immigrant family, and as a gay child and man, there was always some part of me that felt left out of the American narrative, that didn't feel quite American. I thought this is what it meant to be an American, not the Blanco family, but the white family sitting around calmly watching TV. And I even considered at one point changing my name from Richard Blanco to Dick White, but never happened. So anyway, the inauguration gave me a really profound and newfound sense of myself and my place at the American table, which included black beans and tamales. And it let me realize that my story as a Latinx gay man of working class immigrants was indeed part of the American, we, the people, of that American narrative. That each one of our Latinx stories from every walk of life is and always was part of the American narrative. That by definition in a democracy, all our narratives must count. Part of that e pluribus unum, out of the many, one. That was the central message I wanted to convey in the inaugural poem that I delivered. So I'd like to take us back there for a moment as a point of reference to where our nation is now. I'm going to read a small preface from a memoir of what was going on in my mind while I'm sitting on that platform, waiting to be called up to the podium. In the moment, I feel America standing as one, putting differences aside and taking a deep collective breath. We pay tribute to something far bigger and more important than any one of us. And I truly feel like one of us, one of we, the people, in the echoes of the president's and others' speeches. I embrace America in a way I never had or thought I could, feeling for the first time that I truly belong to one country, not an imaginary ideal from TV or a nostalgic Cuba floating in the sea of my parents' memories, but a real tangible place that is mine, was mine all along. I turn to my mother and whisper, "Mama, I guess we're finally Americanos." Senator Schumer introduces me and calls me up to the podium. My mother squeezes my shoulder. I stand more confident than I imagined I would or could be, transfixed by the moment that is no longer about me or my poem or my glory, but about our country. Still, I'm surprised when the president and vice president stand up to greet me and shake my hand on my way to the podium. They both whisper something in my ear that I can't make out, but their gracious gestures speak silently to my heart, silently, as if saying, "Richard, here is your country. This is your story. You are home." I step up to the podium, look out over the crowd, a patchwork quilt of lives, of stories spread across our ground, under our sky, beneath our one sun. I take it all in as I take one deep breath and then another. This is for them. This is for us, for all of us. I think to myself and begin speaking into our wind. Mr. President, Mr. Vice President, America, one today. One sun rose on us today, kindled over our shores, peeking over the Smokies, greeting the faces of the Great Lakes, spreading a simple truth across the Great Plains, then charging over the Rockies. One light, waking up rooftops, under each one a story, told by our silent gestures, moving behind our windows. My face, your face, millions of faces in morning's mirrors, each one yawning to life, crescendoing into our day. Pencil yellow school buses, the rhythm of traffic lights, fruit stands, apples, limes, and oranges, arrayed like rainbows, begging our praise. Silver trucks heavy with oil or paper, bricks or milk, teeming over highways alongside us, on our way to clean tables, read ledgers, or save lives, to teach geometry or ring up groceries as my mother did for 20 years so I could write this poem for us today. All of us, as vital as the one light we move through. The same light on blackboards with lessons for the day, equations to solve, history to question, or atoms imagined. The I have a dream we keep dreaming, or the impossible vocabulary of sorrow that won't explain the empty deaths of children marked absent today and forever. Many prayers, but one light. Breathing color into stained glass windows, life into the faces of bronze statues, warmth onto the steps of our museums and park benches as mothers watch their children slide into the day. One ground, our ground, rooting us to every stalk of corn, every head of wheat sown by sweat and hands gleaning coal or planting windmills in deserts and hilltops that keep us warm, hands digging trenches, hands routing pipes and cables, hands as worn as my father's, cutting sugarcane so my brother and I could have books and shoes. The dust of our farms and deserts, our cities and plains mingled by one wind, our breath. Breathe. Hear it. Through the day's gorgeous din of honking cabs, buses launching down avenues, the symphony of footsteps, guitars, and screeching subways, the unexpected songbird on your clothesline. Here, squeaky playground swings, trains whistling, or whispers across cafe tables. Here, the doors we open for each other all day, saying, hello, shalom, buongiorno, howdy, namaste, or buenos dias, in the language my mother taught me. In every language, spoken into one wind, carrying our lives without prejudice, as these words break from my lips. One sky, since the Appalachians and Sierras claim their majesty, and the Mississippi and Colorado work their way to the sea. Thank the work of our hands, weaving steel into bridges, finishing one more report for the boss on time, stitching another wound or uniform. The first brushstroke on a portrait, or the last floor on the Freedom Tower, jutting into sky that yields to our resilience, one sky toward which we sometimes lift our eyes, tired from work. Some days guessing at the weather of our lives, some days giving thanks for a love that loves you back, sometimes praising a mother who knew how to give, or forgiving a father who couldn't give what you wanted. Still, we head home through the gloss of rain or weight of snow or the plum blush of dusk, but always, always home, always under one sky, our sky, and always one moon, like a silent drum tapping on every rooftop and every window of one country, all of us facing the stars and hope, a new constellation, still waiting for us to map it, still waiting for us to name it together. The inauguration also transformed me as a poet and as a human being. I started to think about what a poem can do or should do in the world, my role as a civic-minded and socially conscious poet and person, and how it is my duty, our duty really, to continue to write that narrative, write it not just for ourselves, but for all of us, and especially for our hermanos and hermanas who can't write it yet, who don't have that opportunity to write it yet. And essentially, that's what became this new book, How to Love a Country, which is a statement as well as a question, as well as these days a self-help book. Anyway, I just want to share a few poems from that book, which I think speak to our shared Latinx emotions. This first poem was one of the poems that I also wrote for the White House. They asked me to write 3. This is my mother at the inauguration with me, as I mentioned earlier. She sat right next to me, and a picture of my mother in Cuba. And for the third poem, the White House asked me, I just started thinking about her journey as an exile, as an immigrant, and the incredible courage and that she had, and the quintessential American dream. And also thinking about how my mother holds this country up to a certain bar, that immigrants, looking at our country through immigrants' eyes, remind us to not take for granted those liberties that or those promises that this country made. So yeah, this just asks myself and the reader to step into my mother's emotional shoes as a way of thinking or rethinking our relationship with the United States. Mother country, madre patria. To love a country as if you've lost one. 1968, my mother leaves Cuba for America, a scene I imagine as if standing in her place. One foot inside a plane destined for a country she knew only as a name, a color on a map, or glossy photos from drugstore magazines. Her other foot anchored to the platform of her patria, her hand clutched around one suitcase, taking only what she needs most. Hand-colored photographs of her family, her wedding veil, the doorknob of her house, a jar of dirt from her backyard, goodbye letters she won't open for years. The sorrowful drone of engines, one last deep breath of familiar air she'll take with her. One last glimpse at all she'd ever known. The palm trees wave goodbye as she steps onto the plane. The mountains shrink from her eyes as she lifts off into another life to love a country as if you've lost one. I hear her Once upon a time, reading picture books over my shoulder at bedtime, both of us learning English, sounding out words as strange as the talking animals and fair-haired princes in their pages. I taste her first attempts at macaroni and cheese, but with chorizo and peppers, and her shame over Thanksgiving turkeys, always dry, but countered by her perfect pork pernil and garlic yuca. I smell the rain of those mornings, huddled as one under one umbrella, waiting for the bus to her 10-hour days at the cash register. And at night, the zzz, zzz of her sewing her own blouses and quinceañera dresses for her grown nieces still in Cuba, guessing at their sizes, and the gals who settle neighbors to say for a rusty white sedan, no hubcaps, no air conditioning, sweating all the way through our first vacation to Florida theme parks to love a country, as if you've lost one, as if it were you on a plane departing from America forever. Clouds closing like curtains on your country, the last scene in which you're a madman scribbling the names of your favorite flowers, trees, and birds you'd never see again. Your address and phone number you'd never use again. The color of your father's eyes and your mother's hair, terrified you could somehow, someday forget these. To love a country, as if I was my mother last spring, hobbling, insisting I help her climb all the way up to the U.S. Capitol, as if she were here before you today instead of me, explaining her tears, her cheeks pink as the cherry blossoms coloring the air that day, when she stopped, turned to me, and said, "You know, mijo, I've been thinking. It isn't where you're born that matters. It's where you choose to die. That is your country." This next poem speaks to another kind of immigration story, one that is much more in the news. And it's a persona poem. It's written in the voice of El Rio Grande as a way to discuss the absurdity of borders, especially in the 21st century. And to have us think about how different that is today, and also the fact that this geopolitical idea of borders is really something that is really just something maintained to maintain power and wealth. But the world didn't come with maps. So again, this is in the voice of El Rio Grande. Complaint of El Rio Grande. I was meant for all things to meet, to make the clouds pause in the mirror of my waters, to be home to fallen rain that finds its way to me, to turn eons of loveless rock into love-sick pebbles and carry them as humble gifts back to the sea, which brings life back to me. I felt the sun flare, praised each star flocked about the moon long before you did. I breathed air you'll never breathe. Listened to songbirds before you could speak their names, before you dug your oars in me, before you created the gods that created you. Then countries, your invention, maps jigsawing the world into colored shapes, caged in bold lines to say you're here, not there, you're this, not that, to say yellow isn't red, red isn't black, black is not white, to say mine, not ours, to say war, and believe life's worth is relative. You named me. Big River. Drew me. Blue, thick, to divide, to say spick and Yankee, to say wetback and gringo. You split me in two, half of me us, the rest other. But I wasn't meant to drown children. Hear mother's cries, never meant to be your geography, a line, a border, a murderer. I was meant for all things to meet. The mirrored clouds and suns tingle, bird songs in the quiet moon, the wind and its dust, the rush of mountain rain, and us. Blood that runs in you is water flowing in me. Both life, both the truth we know, be one in one another. Lastly, I'd like to close with this poem that I wrote shortly after the El Paso shooting, that I think speaks essentially to a lot of the reasons why we're here today. It's called The U.S. of Us, an anthem for National Hispanic Heritage Month. Oh, say, can you see us by the dawn of our ancestors' light, still breathing through the cities we forged from the wind of our wills, drenched in the rain of our dusty sweat, and christened for the faith gleaming in our saints' starry eyes, San Francisco, San Antonio, San Diego. Oh, say, when will you have enough faith in us to meet the gleam of our eyes in your own? When will you see us as one in this one country we all so proudly hail, and tear down the ramparts that divide us from you instead of raising new walls? Oh, say, when will you believe our hands across our hearts, unwavering belief in those broad stripes and bright stars, waving in the same sky above our same schools, same churches and baseball fields? Oh, say, when will you untranslate us, unitalicize us from the lands and mountains, our lives rooted and named, La Sierra Nevada, La Florida, Montana, Sangre de Cristo, Texas, Nuevo Mexico? When will you recognize the shared words of our shared history? Say rodeo, say bronco, say patio, say plaza, say bonanza, say cañón. Say that you hear our rivers gallantly streaming in Spanish, Rio Colorado, Rio Los Angeles, Rio Grande. When will you stop drowning us, trafficking us like cattle in trucks, corralling us in kitchen alleys and musty motel rooms, scarring our children's faces behind the striped shadows of iron bars, rebranding our skin as rapists and murderers lurking behind you? When will our immigrant toil and struggling dreams not be your ploy for profit? When will you praise us as assets and allies? We will not live our worthy lives in fear and shame. Oh, say, look at us. We're the determination in our dirt-creased hands harvesting lettuce and the firm handshakes of our mayors bestowing keys to their cities. We're the silent chopping of onions you don't hear at your dinner table and the silence in the eyes of astronauts eyeing a nationless Earth. Oh, say, listen to us. With the snip-snip of gardeners trimming your hedges and the rattle of our maracas playing on the radio, with the kind voices of bus drivers wishing you a buenos dias and the pop voices of singers stirring you to dance into your bodies, with the riveting steel piecing cars together and the beats of our poets pounding out lyrics. Oh, say, feel us. With the strengths of nannies pushing strollers up Park Hills and the muscle of batters swatting home runs over stadium walls, with the prideful tucking of satin hotel sheets and the pride of graduates in satin gowns. Oh, say, then why the bombs of slurs still bursting in the toxic air against us? Why the rocket's red glare of your eyes aimed at us in this needless, perilous fight? Oh, say, let there be proof that star-spangled banner still waves for us, too. Let the land of the free count us in two. Let the home of the brave remain our home, too.
Muchas gracias, Richard. Me diste escalofrío, goosebumps. Thank you for being part of our story forum. Listening to your words, especially your poem, The U.S. of Us, gave me a feeling of being weightless. Your words brought so much peace to my mind. They covered me like a blanket where I felt totally present and appreciating your tenderness of how you told the story of our people, our struggles, our luchas, our perseverance. Thank you for that beautiful experience. I now have the pleasure to present the next part of our program, Action in Community. We can listen and read and learn a lot, but if we don't convert our learning into action, then we're just sitting quietly, letting the world pass us by. A good friend, Victor, shared with me that in the activist community, there is a saying, spider bite, that turning point when a person considers themselves an activist. The bite is the excitement you get of wanting to act, where you feel your blood is rushing throughout your body, your heart is pumping fast because it wants to get started, and your mind is filled with ideas. Our next presenters are some amazing young leaders who got that spider bite early in life, and since then have taken that energy to combat injustices locally, regionally, and nationally. They share a passion for organizing, educating people, and involving folks in the fight against injustices. They are the change makers who are amplifying our voice. Ramon Contreras is the co-founder of Youth Over Guns, and an amazing person who travels the country sharing his personal story of being an activist and the importance in using our voices. Anaí Figueroa Flores is a student at Georgetown University in DC and is one of our homegrown here from Commerce City who makes us proud. Her story is of persistence and learning to be an activist. Her goal is to get people to reimagine communities where everyone is celebrated and engaged. So without further ado, let's hear from Ramon and Anaí.
Hi, everyone. My name is Ramon Contreras. I am from Harlem, New York. I was born and raised in New York my entire life. And most people know me as an activist. And I have been involved for a while. Mainly, I started organizing my sophomore year of high school. I went to a school in the South Bronx. It was a charter school, and it was in a really underprivileged community. And every day we went to school, we were always struck by different injustices that weren't really clear from us at a young age, like police officers always around our school, trash all over our school, different things that made up all these tiny microaggressions that somehow told us that we were lesser than any other child that was in a wealthier community. I got involved when Black Lives Matter really started to become a movement around the country. And, you know, the protest in St. Louis, the protest in Baltimore, and I began organizing in my high school town halls. I started a school newspaper called Emancipation, which we used to talk about the different microaggressions within our high school and within our community. And it was a way to start getting people involved. My activism really took off, unfortunately, in my senior year when I lost a friend to gun violence. He was walking home from a party and he was struck by a bullet in the chest. This was something that hurt my community and hurt my friends and me, and it was a wake-up call. I decided that I wanted to do something about it. At the time, just a couple months later, there was a mass shooting in Parkland, Florida that also took place. That took the lives of 17 high school students. And the whole country started organizing around gun violence. But there was one major piece that was missing: the Black and brown lives that face gun violence every day in America. So I started an organization called Youth Over Guns to ensure that Black and brown young people are at the forefront of this movement and are speaking to the solutions that can actually help eliminate gun violence in our communities. We spoke about funding for our schools. We talked about alternatives to police. We talked about finding a way to actually restore community within our urban cities, which, you know, for a long time have been broken down. As we see around the country, even today with the Black Lives Matter movement, those demands aren't different. Young people have been demanding this for decades. And what Youth Over Guns try to do is just bring all those young people together and say, you know, we're sick and tired of having to live in a country and in America that refuses to acknowledge the issues, that refuses to acknowledge young people and what they mean in America and how we represent the future. And we won't have a future if our current political system continues to function the way it does. After I organized a march across the Brooklyn Bridge, where 10,000 young people came out as we carried a casket to symbolize all the deaths in our Black and brown communities, I was fortunate enough to get on a bus with the March for Our Lives students from Parkland and travel to over 60 cities across the United States. On that journey, I learned a lot about America, and I learned a lot about myself and the power that we have when we use our voice and speak up. In these 60 cities, I spoke at rallies, I registered young people to vote, and I got to know a lot of different backgrounds and cultures. For example, when I was in the Deep South, I was in towns that were majority Trump supporters, and I would run into people who knew that we were there protesting to get stricter gun laws, in their state and in America. And these counter protesters would come with their AR-15s, their pistols, and they'll yell at us and they'll tell us that you're not going to take our guns, you're not going to, come in and tell us how to run our state or our country. And I remember one instance when I crossed the street and I went to go speak to one of these counter protesters. And through our conversation, we put politics aside and we actually spoke about who we are and where we come from. Through that conversation, I learned more about him than I would if we just got into a conversation about why I'm a Democrat and why I'm a Republican. But instead, we spoke about me growing up in Harlem, the loss of my friend, hearing gunshots growing up for the majority of my childhood. And he spoke about his service as a police officer, him wanting to keep his family safe, and what it means for him to have a gun. Through our conversation, we realized that we shared one common hope, and that is to create a country that is truly safe from any type of evil, any type of violence. He just had one way of doing it, and I had another. But at the end of the conversation, we agreed on policy that can actually help keep us safe. And we gave each other a hug, and we took a selfie, and we exchanged numbers, and we kept in contact for the rest of the summer. That spoke volume to what America could be and what happens when we use our voices. What happens when anybody, no matter from any community that you come from, steps out of their comfort zone and tries to do something that they truly care about. At the end of the summer, we were fortunate enough to have one of the highest youth turnouts in a midterm history for a non-presidential cycle. Young people turned out and they used their voices to actually create change in America. What I do now is I sit on the board of an organization called Generation Vote. And what I try to do is make sure that young people have the accessible tools that they need in order to vote, in order to find a polling place, and to ensure that their government, isn't trying to suppress their vote. Right now, we live in a time where the way that politicians gain power or gain office is by suppressing the most vital vote in America, and that's our vote, the votes of young Latino and Black people all across this country who understand that the system doesn't work and understand that in order to actually fix it, we're going to have to vote. But it's going to take a lot more than just knowing that we have to vote. It has to take having that conversation with your neighbors. It takes understanding that we are battling a system that for decades, generations, has been working against actually giving us power, actually giving us the right to be able to say that that is time for a change. So that's who I am. That's what I do. And if we don't come together in this time, if we don't look around and start asking questions and start questioning why our communities look a certain way, why is the current presidency the way it is, or why is the Senate the way it is, if we don't start to question the inequalities and the injustices that are happening every day in America, then we're never going to actually solve the issues and find the answers to these questions. It's going to take a community, and it's going to take a large movement of people who really, truly want to see radical change in America to actually produce it. And that won't happen unless we start questioning, unless we get out and organize, and unless we vote. And with this election coming up on November 3rd, it's going to be one of the most vital elections of our lifetime. For the first time ever, Donald Trump has an opportunity to truly set a conservative court of his liking for generations to come, a court that will represent his own values, which are terrifying, his own beliefs, which don't reflect the American people and don't reflect the Hispanic community or the Black community. He's going to have the opportunity to make a long-lasting impact on how politics works in our country. And we can't allow that to happen because this country isn't what Donald Trump says, and this country isn't what the Senate says. This country is what we decided we want to be. And if we don't vote, then we're allowing for America to say that we aren't enough. We're allowing for America to say that Black lives aren't enough. We're allowing for America to say that our lives aren't valued as much as the lives of those of the wealthy. So I'm asking you to vote. I'm asking you to fight for somebody you don't know and to fight for your family members and your neighbors. I'm asking you to build a community within your own community of people who truly want to see generational change. Because if we don't do that, then we won't see the change we want. Thank you, and I hope that you can get out to the polls this November.
First and foremost, thank you for letting me be part of the Our Story Forum. I'm very grateful to be here. Like many of you, I grew up here, Commerce City to be exact. I grew up going to La Pradera and El Pueblo. I remember when La Flor de Michoacán first opened and my parents took my siblings and I to get paletas. And so when people ask me where I call home, I tell them Commerce City because that's where my home is and that's where my family is. I graduated from Adams City High School in 2017 and moved to Washington, D.C. to start college. I am now a senior at Georgetown University studying computer science and sociology. And I want to tell you that I wouldn't be here if it weren't for the unconditional support from my family, Jesse, and Inspire. Inspire is a youth leadership and college access program in Colorado, which I was part of during my junior year and senior year of high school. And Inspire and Jesse believed in me before I even did. And when I was applying to colleges, I knew that there weren't many scholarships for undocumented students and that I didn't qualify for FAFSA, which is federal funding from the government. So I knew that my journey wasn't going to be the same as other students. So I applied to schools that met full need. So most of them were outside of the state. And so that meant that they didn't look necessarily if I had a social security number or if I was a US citizen. They instead looked at how much my parents made. And so I was able to afford and attend those schools. So I applied to many schools and I got rejected by all of them, except Georgetown. And to any students applying to universities and colleges, I want to tell you that you only need one yes. And for me, that was Georgetown. And during my first year, it was really difficult. Aside from the academics and being away from home, DACA was rescinded in the fall of 2017. I was only a first-year student and I had to tackle with school and like being away from home. And on top of that, how do I handle like this news? I started sharing my story many times. I went to sit-ins, I went to protests. I did everything I could to advocate for my community. Last semester, I helped organize a walkout at my school in regards to the Supreme Court hearing on DACA. And when the Supreme Court ruled against the Trump administration this past summer, I was hopeful. I remember the decision when the decision was released. It was really early in Colorado, and I was expecting the worst. I was refreshing my Twitter feed every 5 seconds, and then the decision was released. I've been waiting for this decision since I could remember, since like March, and I didn't even know how to feel. I remember telling my mom and hugging her. I texted my older sister and my friends, and all I remember is a flood of emotions. But again, my hopefulness was shut down really quickly because soon after that, the Trump administration never reinstated the program, which denied the opportunity for thousands of undocumented youth to apply to DACA. So you see, DACA was never a permanent solution. It was only a temporary one that was fought by activists. But yet again, in this racist and white supremacist country, they never saw us as people. DACA was only given to those who were considered deserving, the so-called dreamers who were high achieving and successful. Those were the only stories being highlighted in the media. We were only valued for what we contributed to this country. And we see this play out when the media and politicians talk about how much undocumented people pay in taxes, their careers, and so on. In a way, I felt like they were dehumanizing me and my family. We were only seen as numbers and objects. Alan Pelaez, a Afro-Indigenous poet, writes in Lessons from an Immigrant Rights Movement that Black people are fighting to end anti-Blackness, racism, and colorism. The immigrant rights movement, however, does not center Black immigrants and therefore missing a Black liberation framework. Despite the fact that many undocumented immigrants are Black, I can comfortably say this because witnessing the killings of Trayvon Martin, Sandra Bland, and Philando Castillo, I have realized that citizenship was only symbolic because their lives were not protected. Native Americans are citizens, Black Americans are citizens, but both of these communities show us that even citizenship is not enough. When I read Alan's work, my thinking changed completely. So I ask you one thing: question everything you see around you, question the people in power, learn and unlearn, decolonize your mind, ask yourself questions, and reflect on your own experiences. Recognize your privileges, criticize each system that perpetuates oppression, read more, and surround yourself with a community who celebrates you and your growth. Have an open mind and think critically, but most importantly, reimagine. When I was sharing my story at protests and sit-ins, I didn't realize that I was perpetuating this dreamer narrative that I explained. You see, dreamer narratives are rooted in anti-Blackness, which are also excluding the majority of people because most people don't even qualify for DACA. I never saw my parents in those stories. I never saw their dreams being validated by the media. Instead, they were criminalized. My mother has dreams. My father has aspirations. I remember when my mother told me of the day that she dreams of getting on a plane and traveling, of a day where she would reconnect with my grandparents. I began unlearning from the mistakes I did, and I am looking forward to reimagining a better future, a better world. Because for the longest time, I felt like I was only surviving. For the longest time, I've grappled with not knowing where I belong, with the uncertainty of my life and my future. I started to look beyond the need of DACA and papers. I've questioned my identity, and oftentimes I don't even consider myself an activist or use the word activist. And while I still don't have answers, something I've learned is that your existence itself is an act of resistance. You yourself are a fighter, and activism presents itself and manifests itself in many ways. I learned that change doesn't happen within these systems that oppress our communities. I ask you to reimagine different possibilities for our communities. Reimagine a world where our communities are celebrated. I recently wrote this article over the summer, and I'm going to read a few lines from it. I wrote, "For now, I move forward to reimagine. I reimagine a world with no borders, where immigrants like me can move unencumbered, reuniting with our families in and outside of the US. I reimagine a place where our families are not targeted, criminalized, or separated. I reimagine a world where we abolish all systems that perpetuate fear and harm in our communities. I reimagine a world where we are free because on stolen land, no person should be deemed illegal. To my community during these difficult times, I ask you to hold each other and lean on each other. Find a support system because you are not alone. We deserve more. Our communities deserve more. Thank you so much.
What powerful voices. Muchas gracias, Ramon and Anaí, for sharing your story and for the bold and courageous work you do in your communities. As I listen to each of your stories, I have great admiration for your ability to act against injustice while building resilience within yourselves and in your community. You are amplifying your voice, sharing a story of injustice, while creating opportunities for others to get involved. To all of you joining us out there today, I hope that Ramon and Anaí inspired you to take action and that your mind is racing with ideas of what you can do at home. Now, more than ever, it is important to help our communities be more resilient and help them recharge to rebuild communities where everyone thrives. Your involvement is essential. That is why today we are announcing a partnership with AT&T called Colorado Action Awards. Here with me to share this exciting news is Guillermo Lambari, Director of External Affairs with AT&T Colorado, Wyoming, and a board member of the LCFC. Thank you, Guillermo and AT&T, for your commitment in building strong communities in Colorado. To all of you joining us today, if you have a plan to create change in your community alongside friends, family, neighbors, or local nonprofit organizations, submit your idea for consideration. You can apply starting today through November 23rd. This opportunity is open to organizations, individuals, communities, and nonprofits located within Colorado. You can submit your application by visiting the LCFC website, which is latinocfc.org. Again, latinocfc.org. Complete instructions can be found there as well. We will notify people of their award by the end of the year. I look forward to reading your ideas.
Gracias, Carlos. I'm so proud to be a board member of the foundation and an employee of a company like AT&T that is truly committed to equity. Today, AT&T's core value to stand for equality has never been more relevant, not only internally, but externally as well. It is a business imperative to champion equality, diversity, and inclusion in every aspect of our business. We live in turbulent times, and listening to each other's stories like Ramon and Anaís, is important to further our understanding of who we are and where we came from. But we know we must do more. Through our AT&T Believes philanthropic initiative, we are working with organizations that drive economic empowerment and equity in the Latino community and in underrepresented communities across Colorado, such as the Latino Community Foundation. Nationally, we've committed $10 million this year to create economic opportunities and foster upward mobility for underserved communities who face long-standing social justice inequities and higher unemployment, all of which have been made worse by the COVID-19 pandemic. There is no doubt that 2020 has been a challenging and chaotic year. Amidst the coronavirus pandemic and tragic instances of racial injustice, we must lean on each other and lift each other up. To quote my mother, siempre tenemos que mantenernos una familia unida, or we always need to be united as a family. It's unity and inclusivity that makes us stronger. AT&T is pleased to partner with the Latino Community Foundation of Colorado to launch the Colorado Action Awards, designed to strengthen inclusive and equitable democratic values in local communities. The awards are intended to support local community projects that are created by and for the community and engage Latinos in a meaningful and culturally relevant way. The project will make 10 $2,500 awards for a total of $25,000 to projects across Colorado. We will support projects that improve the health of our communities, the education of our children, and economic opportunities. Engage people in improving their local communities by educating them about how the political process works. get people out to vote, run for office, and become advocates. Build collaborations between individuals, organizations, and communities. Create town halls or community gatherings, and break down barriers that prevent Latinos from participating civically. It's time to come together as a family and use our collective strengths to unite and reimagine our communities. To rebuild from our roots with the hands of many, not the powerful few. We know that when we come together, we leave our differences aside and fight for the bigger cause, we create movements that can lead to transformative change. We believe every Latino Coloradan is a leader, and our strength lies in that leadership.
Anyone could get civically engaged no matter what age you are. So I encourage you to go ahead and apply. And now we're gonna start some more fun. More music, more cumbia, more son, more whatever you wanna move to, yeah. Let us all get up and dance with Making Movies.
This next song we're going to perform for you all is not a song that we wrote, but it's a song that we started performing when we first heard of the idea of building a wall between the United States and Mexico. This song has a lyric that says, "We're holding hands as walls come tumbling down," and we much prefer that idea. So with that in mind, we're going to play a little classic for you all, but to a Mexicano rhythm. 1, 2, 1, 2, 3. Welcome to your life. There's no turning back. Even while we sleep, we will find you acting on your best behavior. Turn your back on Mother Nature. Everybody wants to rule the world. It's my own desire. It's my own remorse. Help me to decide. Help me make the most of freedom and of pleasure. Nothing ever lasts forever. Everybody wants to rule the world. There's a room where the light won't find you. Holding hands while the walls come tumbling down. When they do, I'll be right behind you. So glad we almost made it. So sad they had to fade it. Everybody wants to rule the world. I can't stand this indecision, married with a lack of vision. Everybody wants to rule the world. Say that you'll never, never need it. One headline, why believe it? Everybody wants to rule the world. All for freedom and for pleasure. Nothing ever lasts forever. Everybody Thank you all so much. We miss you. We can't wait to come back to Colorado and play music for all of you.
Back soon. Thank you. Stay safe.
Ciao.
Now that was so fun. What an incredible day, right? We've heard from so many different people, we've gotten inspired, we've gotten so encouraged to become civically engaged. That's what today is all about, and we have so much more of that coming up. Up next, to introduce the LCFC Partner Award, please join me in welcoming LCFC board member Elaine Torres.
Thank you, Sonia, for that warm welcome. Hello, everyone. My name is Elaine Torres, and I'm a member of the Board of Directors of the Latino Community Foundation of Colorado. It is my honor today to present our inaugural Partner Award to our dear friends at the Denver Art Museum. This award recognizes the generous commitment and ongoing support that has enabled us to grow and expand our annual anchor events, the Our Story Forum. Throughout our partnership, the Denver Art Museum has generously provided in-kind support to LCFC, which has included the use of their space. They're reliable, they're professional, they're easy to work with, but most importantly, they've always welcomed us with open arms. We're so grateful for not only how they've supported and welcomed us over the years, but how they've welcomed the Latino community into the museum during our events year after year. Many of our attendees have told us that our event was their first time visiting the museum. And we know these connections to world-class art and one of our city's premier art institutions can last a lifetime and influence families for generations to come. I'm so honored to present this award to Christoph Heinrich, Director of the Denver Art Museum. Christoph, congratulations to you and your team for this very special honor. Thank you for all you do for the Latino Community Foundation of Colorado. Please accept this award on behalf of the foundation, staff, and board. Congratulations.
Hi, everyone. My name is Christoph Heinrich. I'm the proud director of this wonderful museum, the Denver Art Museum. I couldn't be more thrilled to be accepting this incredible honor from the Latino Community Foundation of Colorado. Honestly, to be recognized as a partner to this organization when we as an institution feel that we have been the ones to benefit so immensely from our collaboration, that speaks volumes about what a true partnership can look like. Thank you.
And Carlos and his small but incredibly mighty team, as well as the Foundation's Board of Directors, have been wonderful colleagues, teachers, connectors, and resources for the Denver Art Museum, helping us to better serve the full spectrum of our community.
From providing advice to sharing our programs with the communities, the Foundation has been partner to us in countless ways over the years.
It's been an honor to host many of the annual forums on our campus, and we hope that next year we'll be together again at the museum for this program.
Y aunque hubiésemos querido ofrecerles una mirada en vivo de las galerías, más adelante en el programa compartiremos información especial sobre la próxima exposición, Frida Kahlo, Diego Rivera, and the Mexican Modernism.
We are grateful to be able to support the Latino Community Foundation of Colorado, and we look forward to many more years of partnership.
Well, thank you again for this incredible honor, and we all hope to be able to see you back again here on the campus as soon as possible. Thank you very much.
Congratulations to the Denver Art Museum. Now we've come to my last official duty of the day. This has been truly an amazing experience. Let's welcome our next guest who will present the Emerging Leader Award to two rising Latino leaders who have displayed courage and promise in their work and contributions to the community. Help me in welcoming two members of LCFC's Young Latino Philanthropists, Vicente Cardona and Ali Barnard.
Thank you, Sonia. Hello, everyone. My name is Vicente Cardona, and I am a co-chair for the Young Latino Philanthropists Giving Circle. It is my honor today to present Susana Guardado with the Emerging Leader Award that recognizes a rising Latino or Latina leader that has displayed courage and promise in their work and contributions to their community. Susana is the executive director of One Morgan County, an award-winning nonprofit organization that fosters community cohesion in the Morgan County area. Their work focuses on interculturalism based on building trust, shared values, and common experiences to bridge culture and social differences, which has resulted in the thriving environment.
Thank you, Vicente, and thank you, the Latino Community Foundation of Colorado. I am honored to accept the Emergent Leader Award. First and foremost, I want to thank my family and some of my friends, in particular, Eric Ishiwada, Taylor Jordan, Lilia Vieira, and Gloria Perez. You have all stood beside me in tough times, at times when I really needed support and kind of that kick in the butt to continue with the organization and just keep going forward. I also want to call attention to Carlos Martinez. The first time I met Carlos was in June of 2017. I was actually thinking about leaving the organization. I had just been made interim director, and he really took a moment of his time and asked, what was I struggling with? How was it going? And I gave him one sentence on just, I didn't really think I was going to stick around. And he let me know that most executive directors of color don't last more than 3 years, and that he's seen great potential in me, and to really use my lived experience as an immigrant to lead an organization that essentially works for and with immigrants and refugees. Something that really hadn't clicked till then, being an immigrant. The theme of today is rebuilding our future, something that resonates personally. As an immigrant, my family came over when I was 5 years old to build a better life for ourselves and for our family back home. One of the first leaders in my life who I want to dedicate this award to is my sister, Anna. She was the person who always pushed me out of my comfort zone, got me in trouble a lot of times. So the award today I am dedicating to her and to my community who has embraced me, supported me, and let me work alongside them. Thank you so much, everyone, and I am pleased to accept this award.
Hello, everyone. My name is Ali Barnard. I am the events chair of Young Latino Philanthropist Giving Circle. It is my honor today to present Victor Galvan with the Emergent Leader Award that recognizes a rising Latino leader that has displayed courage and promise in their work and contributions to community. Victor joins United for a New Economy as their first political field director after 8 years at the Colorado Immigrant Rights Coalition. He led a robust voter integrated organizing program that targeted over 175,000 low propensity voters of color throughout Colorado. He then organizes voters to engage their legislators even after elections and led to bipartisan work on license legislation that increased access to driver's license to undocumented Coloradans. Victor's passion for the immigrant rights movement has been apparent through his many years of dedicated work. Not only has Victor displayed courage and wisdom, but he has motivated and inspired so many in our community to get engaged and speak out. Congratulations, Victor.
First and foremost, I want to thank the Latino Community Foundation for this recognition and honor as an emerging leader here in Colorado. None of us ever hop into the social justice movement for the praises or for the honors. We step into this work because of the dire need for social change in our communities. You see the need for leadership development, civic engagement, and a hunger for social justice. Here in Colorado, I've considered Denver my home my entire life. But I've come to find out that there are two Colorados. One that creates opportunities and opens doors for some, providing quality education and access to good paying jobs with incredible benefits and limitless opportunities to grow generational wealth. Then I've seen another Colorado that caps education for some, creates path to dead-end jobs with no benefits, and leaves families struggling to build a small savings for even emergencies. My mother has been one of them. She's really the reason why I've gotten involved in the social justice movement, why I've fought so vigorously to change laws here in Colorado. There's one instance in particular that inspired me to become a leader. One day, just before my graduation in high school, she sat me down and said, you know, this is enough. You don't have to go to college. Knowing that we couldn't afford it because of my legal status, we'd have to pay out-of-state tuition. And I turned to her and I said, no, this isn't enough and we deserve better than this. Speaking to the person who had, by her own grit, raised 3 young boys on her own and given us an opportunity for a greater education and for so much more. And I want to return that favor not only to her, but to the rest of our community to show them that we absolutely deserve better. My years in social justice and the immigrant rights movement through Padres y Jóvenes Unidos and the Colorado Immigrant Rights Coalition have led to some amazing victories. But I've not done this work on my own. Licenses for all, access to in-state tuition, getting rid of our Show Me Your Papers law here in Colorado. That's been a community effort. And it's the reason why I continue to do this work, because I'm inspired on a daily basis by those who decide to take lead and actually change the world around them. So this is for them. As an emerging leader here in Colorado, I want to thank everyone who's been a part of this movement alongside with me, because this is just as much yours as it is mine. Thank you.
Congratulations to 2 amazing leaders, Susana and Victor. Susana, I still remember that day we had that talk. I was driving down Galapagos Street on my way to a meeting, and I had to pull over because I knew this conversation was going to be more than just a few minutes. And to see how you've developed and shaped your leadership is extraordinary. And Victor, another superstar, who began doing advocacy work as a teenager, continues the lucha, and someone who has taught me a lot through these monthly conversations that we have. It is a pleasure to honor you both. When I welcomed you at the beginning of the forum, I said, if we are going to get our families and our communities to a better place, we need to do it as a united community. We need to rebuild together. It's about seeing yourself as part of the bigger picture, part of the bigger community, seeing yourself with collective power, and seeing yourself act with others. For the last several hours, my mind has been stimulated with ideas. My heart is at peace because I know we can come together and do great things. And my soul is hungry for action. I hope you too have been driven to action. Let's rebuild together. Let's share our talents and let's reimagine with big, bold ideas. In a couple of days, we'll know an outcome of an election. Regardless of where the election plays out, we need to come together to rebuild as a united community. Now, more than ever, we need to really harness the talent, the strength, and the power of our community to be able to thrive. Because together, our collective power will tackle the injustices our community confronts. And by doing so, we will have a strong Latino community where our children have an outstanding education and learn about their history, their people, their heritage. Our families will have the health care they need to take care of their physical and mental health. Our people will have good jobs where they're treated with respect and dignity. And our communities will have people, the resources, and the orgullo, or the pride, to thrive. As we rebuild our communities, let's do it in a way that honors our people, our traditions, our heritage. Let's come together and deepen that community inheritance that I shared with you earlier today. For when we do, We create the power to exist in our fullest form and give in our most caring way. As we come to an end, I want to thank all our presenters, our speakers, entertainers for their participation in the 2020 Our Story Forum. They are contributing to building our story, one that is being created by us and for us. They have laid a stone in our path for liberation. We will follow. We will also lay a stone on this path to liberation. For we will build it by many. This forum happens because of people, institutions who believe in us and financially support us. Therefore, I would like to thank our sponsors for their support in this year's forum. Our premier sponsors, the Colorado Finance and Housing Authority and the Colorado Health Foundation. Our changemaker sponsors, AT&T, Alpine Bank, Denver Art Museum, Miller Coors, and the University of Denver. Our innovator sponsor, Xcel, and our investor sponsors, Caring for Colorado, Citywide Banks, Connect for Health Colorado, the Latinx Center for Community Engagement and Scholarship at the University of Denver, and Mental Health Centers of Denver as well. And lastly, our community partners, the Denver Botanical Gardens, the Denver Center for Performing Arts, Denver Film, the Denver Museum of Nature and Science, Forsyth Associates, History Colorado, and lastly, the Latino Cultural Arts Center. I would also like to thank our board of directors for their commitment and dedication to furthering the mission of the organization. Gloria Schoch, our chair, Miria Ponte, our secretary, Gary Poling, our treasurer, and our members at large, Yesenia Areola, Thomas Bryan, Eric Ishiwata, Guillermo Lambari, Deborah Ortega, Susana Salamun, Elaine Torres, and Holly Velasquez Horvath. Thank you. And finally, I would like to thank the LCFC team for their hard work in producing this year's forum. Rachel, for her creative talents to curate and carry out a vision for our community in making sure that all components of this forum came together. For Marisa, in assisting in the production, executing our Advocacy Central, and other key logistics. Alexis, who was responsible for our communications, our messaging, and our sponsorships. Brenda for registration, and Priscilla, Daniela, and Deanna for all the behind-the-scenes support that is needed to execute such a production. You hit it out of the ballpark. Thank you. Mi familia, you have spent your day with us. You have participated in your own way, and I hope you are taking something away that will stay with you for a lifetime. I leave you with 3 ways by which you can act immediately. First, make a commitment to get involved in your community. Attend a community meeting, read your local paper, stay abreast of what's happening, and share your talents with an organization in your community. Second, support organizations financially in your community who are doing great work. It doesn't have to be anything big. Give something that makes you proud that you are supporting the community. Our Latino organizations need your help. And lastly, vote. If you have already, awesome. If not, be sure to fill out your ballot and return it or go to your poll on Tuesday. If you're unable to vote for whatever reason, make sure your family, your friends who can vote, vote. By voting, we show our Latino presence, we exercise our liberties, and we build collective power. In closing, I want to leave you with the following. En la vida, todo final es un nuevo comienzo. Corre y empieza tu nuevo. In life, every end is a new beginning. Go and begin your new. Thank you and muchas gracias for being with us today.